When Bob Marley sings Concrete Jungle, if you listen to that lyric in Concrete Jungle, what he does is he collapses history with the present moment. No sun will shine on my day today. The high yellow moon won't come out to play. Darkness has covered my life and has changed my day into night. Where is that love to be found? Won't someone help me? Because life must be somewhere to be found in this concrete jungle where the living is hardest. That is a clear description of ghetto life. It's a clear description of urban squalor. It's a clear description of the suffering that happens in that moment. Then the next verse says, no chains around my feet, but I'm not free. I know I am bound here in captivity, and I'll never know what happiness is. No, I'll never know what sweet caress is, but I will always be laughing like a clown. Won't someone help me? Because life must be somewhere to be found in this concrete jungle where the living is hardest. And in that simple little lyric, what he says is, no chains surround my feet. That the present moment of the issues that I'm dealing with as a poor man living in this concrete jungle are inextricably tied to the history of slavery. And yet he argues that even though there are no chains around my feet, I am not free because I am bound in captivity. And I'll never know what happiness is, and I'll never know what sweet caress is because I'll be always laughing like a clown. The presence of history in the moment. So when he says, slave driver, the table is turned, catch a fire, you're gonna get burned. He's not talking about a historical moment, but he is connecting the attitudes that created slavery, the economy of slavery, the mercantilistic madness of slavery, with the present structures of society that were oppressive and that he perceived as being part of the same mentality of that time. Therefore, history is not an object in the past, but history is current and present. And in these songs, what the singers are doing is taking history to interpret the present moment. Do you know how many history teachers want to do that? Are desperate to do that? Because they understand that it is when you make that connection that you then begin to understand the value of the historical moment. So Burning Spear takes us into the place, and he says, it's an appeal. He says, do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? Because you need to remember the days of slavery. You need to remember the days of slavery. In song after song, therefore, the reggae artist is engaged in a very interesting dynamic. And that dynamic is built around the context in which this music emerges. Reggae music, of course, has a defining and constructing cosmology that surrounds it. That cosmology is founded on Rastafarian beliefs. It is, fundamentally. This is not to say that every reggae song is about Rasta. This is not to say that every reggae song is about anything meaningful, for that matter. Because trust me, there's a lot of reggae that don't have no meaning. That is just pure foolishness. I was telling some students today, there's a great song called Barnabas Collins. Out the light, lock your door tight. Barnabas a comfy, go take one bite. It was a dreadful sight when him bite sister right. You should have hear she bawl. Jesus Christ. Take time, Barney. There's no profound truth in there. Don't go looking for it. And for the record, that was a huge hit in 1979. It was #1 on the charts. Time erases foolishness. You don't know the song because, So, but the cosmology of reggae is really the idea of Rastafarianism. And what I want to do is to let us understand what I mean and what I'm saying about Rastafarianism. Because there is a perception, there's a tremendous anxiety, especially among Christians, that when you say Rasta, people get panicky. The great nightmare of the 1970s and the 80s, and probably today, is for the sun to return with hair that looks questionable. You're turning Rasta on me? No, Daddy, I just never comb my hair. You don't comb your hair? You're turning Rasta? Because the fear of Rasta is a very peculiar reality that exists. And the irony, of course, is that the fear of Rasta is inculcated in people who come out of the same kind of tradition that shaped Rasta and that shaped the Black Baptist movements and all these kinds of belief systems that we actually kind of embrace. For instance, what may not be really understood is that the work of African Americans, there were a couple of African Americans who moved to the Caribbean during the 1800s. They managed to get away from slavery and they moved to the Caribbean. And these were ministers who began the Baptist church. The Baptist church, that is the African Baptist church, basically, in places like Jamaica. And those churches held to the view that there was in the African a validity and a dignity and a humanity connected to the Africanness that was still connected to the faith of Christianity. This is why we engage ourselves in Negro spirituals. What are Negro spirituals if not a way of owning the Christian faith, but owning it from the perspective of somebody who is black? What, if it, you know, let's take a simple Negro spiritual. Go down Moses. You know that Negro spiritual. Way down in Egypt land, tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Who is Pharaoh? And who are my people? It's a slave song. And it's based on the book of Exodus. It's about slaves. And the connection that is being made is that the African who is enslaved feels an affinity to the enslaved Jewish people. Pharaoh is not, listen, Pharaoh is not the African people. And this is why so many slave owners in America sort of slowly started to go, why are they singing that song? Who are they talking about? Because what happens is that sometimes we understand Christianity to be something imposed, but what people were saying was that in their relationship to this idea of a God, they believed that God was going to protect them because God protected those who are oppressed. The Negro spiritual makes that connection repeatedly. It is the same wellspring that emerges this Rastafarian belief, because you see, the Rastafarian belief comes out of the idea, the fundamental idea, that if we were to push it just a little bit, what would happen to the world if God was black? Now, we would say it doesn't matter, right? Well, only a few people would say it doesn't matter. Oh, why are you saying God is black, or why is God is white? So, what do you mean? If the cultural perception of who God was a white guy, like big beard and sort of start hanging out and go, that's the image of God. And all the paintings